All right, we're here. Twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live, wherever you might be joining us. Thank you so much for making us a part of your Wednesday on Twitch, on the website 110sportsmedia.com, or on Twitter on Periscope. Thank you so much for joining us on a Wednesday. Chris Brown is here with me. We got a lot to get to today. Chris, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, Josh. We were talking before we started here about how this time last week we were talking about some not super inspiring basketball in the Champions Classic the night before. Very much not the case today. We've got some good stuff to talk about. Busy night of basketball last night that was really enjoyable to watch. We had 6 top 25 teams playing against other top 25 teams. So we had some good basketball to talk about.
For sure, and this is one of those fun byproducts of having a condensed schedule is that you don't have this lull in between Thanksgiving and the start of conference play where teams are just playing a bunch of cookie cutter teams and a bunch of teams, a bunch of bye games. And when you condense the season like this, you got to get your games in first of all. You've still got your SEC. Your SEC Big 12, which isn't later into the year, but your ACC Big 10, your SEC, your Big 12 Big East battles, and those provide really good games. And a lot of what we got last night was a result of that Big 10 ACC challenge. So we'll get into that here at the top of the show. Let me set the rest of the agenda real quick before we jump into that. We keep getting football on weird days. This was another one of those weeks. Last night we had Baltimore and Dallas. The Cowboys reminded us just how bad of a football team they are right now. We're also going to take a look at the current NFL playoff picture. If the NFL season ended today, where would teams fall in the playoff picture? Who would and wouldn't fall in there? Sam Wiederhaft, Coastal Carolina's Sam Wiederhaft, part of their athletic department, is going to join us at the end of the first hour to talk Coastal, talk college football rankings, and to talk about this incredible season that they're in the middle of, coming off a win against BYU. Humor me, please, at the top of hour 2, followed by a more extensive conversation about the college football playoff rankings, and then a challenge flag and what are we watching to round out the show. Chris, we had 3 really good basketball games last night on ESPN. We'll talk. Let's just go in chronological order. That sounds like the most obvious way to go. We'll start with Kansas Creighton, a mid-afternoon game. 2 top 10 teams. Kansas, a team that we've seen play multiple high-level teams. Well, we can have a debate about whether or not Kentucky is a high-level basketball team right now, but they've played Kentucky. They played Gonzaga, of course, to begin the season, versus this Creighton team that is a top 10 team in the country, but we haven't seen them against the best of opponents yet. And this was really their first chance to prove that they really are a top 10 team and not just a top 10 team because they've beaten the teams they're supposed to beat and happened to be just outside the top 10, I believe, when the preseason AP poll came out. And I think it's fair to say that after this game, that calling Creighton a top 10 team is more than fair, if not correct. Kansas escaping with a 1-point victory over the Blue Jays on a missed field goal, on a missed free throw, actually. And you and I have both seen Marcus Zagorowski up close, and watching him miss a free throw is just something that doesn't happen all that often. He misses a free throw after a really great second half, misses a free throw that would have sent the game into overtime. They lose 73-72. What stands out to you most from either Creighton, Kansas, this top 10 matchup that really was a good one?
Yeah, honestly, I think you kind of got to the biggest point that I observed, which was actually about Creighton, and I had it written down here. I said this is still a very much a top 10 team in my opinion, based on what we saw in that game. The Blue Jays shot 48% from the field against the 5th most efficient defense in the country, and their overall free throw shooting in this game, they were 9 of 18 as a team. Obviously, that's not good. If that's just a little bit better overall, then right now we're talking about a signature win for the Blue Jays. So for me, it wasn't something. Yes, there are things they can improve on. They had some turnover problems midway in the second half, allowed Kansas to kind of go on a little run, get more control of this game. Unsurprisingly, Creighton was pretty well dominated on the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas 13 offensive rebounds, 11 second chance points. So yeah, it's not perfect, but for me, I think it's very clear. I think you got right to that big point for me about Creighton, which is that I think it's very clear that this is still a top 10 team in the country. It's interesting. This is just a random fun fact I saw. Creighton with this loss, Creighton hasn't won a regular season game on ESPN since 2006.
Oh my gosh, really?
Since they beat
Wow.
Fresno State on February 18th, 2006, which is just wild. It's incredibly random. I don't know how many games they've had,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just wild from that perspective. But
I'm sure the
as
answer
far as
isn't only one, right? I'm sure this wasn't the
yeah, I'm
first
sure it's been a
ESPN
couple.
game, right?
Right. Um, as far as Kansas, obviously Jalen Wilson was the star of the show for them.
Mm-hmm.
23 points, 10 rebounds. He hit that go-ahead three, and then with under a minute to go, and then of course he also fouled Marcus Zagorowski on that 3-point attempt from him,
Yep.
and then he only hit 2 of the 3 shots. But you can't help but like what you've seen from Jalen Wilson.
Oh yeah.
He's been the team's best player so far this season. He's been rebounding as well. He's been getting involved in more than just shooting. And so they beat Kentucky, like you mentioned. That was a significant victory, but they didn't play as particularly well in that game. This was for me this is the first win that Kansas can really feel good about. I like their ability to adjust on the fly, and I think it's really starting to come together for them. I think there's still going to be some learning. It's not a team that's all the way there, but it's December 9th, so I like what I've seen from Kansas as well. Really a situation where the game ends, and I'm pretty optimistic about both these teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at times they both played like top 5 teams in the country. I think they both end up around the mean at one of the best 10 teams in the country. I can't decide. First of all, let's talk about that last play. This is why you foul when you're up 3, because even if you foul and not on the shot, you foul before they even get a chance to take a shot and get to the free throw line with a 3-point play or knock down a 3. Kansas got lucky that this game didn't go to overtime, and clearly there are metrics that suggest trying to stop them from scoring rather than basically giving them free points is not the way to go. I can understand that logic, right? It fails the out loud test to give a team free points when the game is that close and when the game is that close to the end. But if you foul Zagorowski in the backcourt and he makes 2 free throws, and then you get the ball in bounds, so another second and a half goes off the clock, and then you make 2 free throws, and then you just keep going. They're eventually going to run out of time, right? And it takes one gamble on a steal instead of trying to get the foul, and the game's over, right? Or one pass that you're able to get to a guy that's not being guarded, and the game's over. And I still don't understand why it isn't done more. Of course, Kansas gets lucky. Zagorowski misses that 3rd free throw, and it doesn't ultimately matter. But it was driving me crazy. This is exactly why you foul when you're up by 3. It didn't quite come back to bite them, but it sure looked like it was going to.
Yeah, it almost did. I mean, it certainly almost did. I was kind of into getting this feeling that if Zagorowski had made all 3 free throws and it went to overtime, I think that I would have had more confidence in Creighton to pull that off. Honestly, just given the momentum, everything we saw, and yeah, they got away with it. And at the end of the day, learning experience, and I get Jalen Wilson, freshman, got a little excited, over aggressive. Mistakes like that can happen, but yeah, it's certainly don't disagree with that assessment, and learning experience for them. It's definitely a Kansas team that, while incredibly talented, they're still, both these teams also, in addition to having stretches where they looked like top 5 teams, like you said, there were also stretches for both teams where they looked like not excellent teams too. So there's lots of time. This is a Kansas team that's still learning, but obviously we know what they're capable of, and it's going to be interesting to watch.
A couple things that I have to gripe about. I need Mitch Ballock to be better than 2 of 8 from the field for just 6 points. This is part of the right. Creighton is still really good, but there were some things that there was some margin of error that was lost when Tyshawn Alexander decided to go to the NBA draft. And one of the things is that Mitch Ballock became a necessity, not a luxury, in the sense that, right, you had Zagorowski, you had Tyshawn Alexander. Tyshawn Alexander, a much more, at least last year, dynamic offensive threat. I thought maybe, Zagorowski, the better shooter, Zagorowski is a little bit more electric. But in terms of the most well-rounded offensive game, I thought Tyshawn Alexander was that guy. And on the other end of the floor, Tyshawn Alexander was your best on-ball defender. So Ballock struggling like that is much more important than it was a year ago. To be honest with you, the fact that he didn't shoot as well as he did, the fact that Zagorowski was 5 of 14, had a really nice second half, but was not great in the first half. Damian Jefferson and Denzel Mahoney and Christian Bishop, they combined to knock down 18 shots between the three of them. That's really good, and that's why they were in this game, not because of their terrifying guards and the way that they shoot it. They were only 33% from the three-point line and got it close. That was one of the things I was worried about Creighton this year, is if they don't shoot it well, are they able to stay in games with good teams? And after one try, the answer to that question is yes. Of course, on the other side of things, Kansas only shoots 39% as a team, but they were 10 of 22 from the three-point line, thanks in large part to Christian Brown and Jalen Wilson, who made 8 of the 10 three-pointers that the Jayhawks made. Ochai Agbaji, I need him to be the more consistent scorer. He 0 of 6, 0 points. That in 24 minutes, that's inexcusable. While Jalen Wilson is awesome and is clearly that breakout star this year for the Jayhawks, Agbaji needs to be better than that. It's that simple. I liked what I saw from David McCormick and the fact that clearly they were going to him in the first half, pound it inside, take advantage of that size, and he was capable of doing that, which is a good thing. Of course, he's not at Udoka Azubuike, but was certainly capable of doing that. So things I want to see from both of these teams, but convinced that both of them are really good, specifically Creighton, getting to see them against a top 10 team. Let's move to Iowa UNC. I've never been more impressed by a basketball team while feeling it's so obvious how to beat this team as I was with the Hawkeyes last night. If you let Iowa run their sets, if you let them move and pass it and get open looks and they're knocking them down, this is saying they're the Golden State Warriors is a massive overreaction, but the idea is the same, is that they're all very unselfish players. They can all shoot the heck out of it. They've got and then in the center, they've got the best player in college basketball in Luka Garza. When they're clicking, their offense is so much fun to watch. And you saw that in the first half. Joe Wieskamp and CJ Frederick came out swinging. Big shot Jordan Bohannon, welcome back to college basketball, buddy. He hadn't had a great start to the season, absolutely exploded in this one. You really saw why this team is so fun to watch. You really saw why this team is ranked third in the country, why everyone was so excited about this season for the Hawkeyes. And then you saw Roy Williams push the ball it pushed the living heck out of the ball. Caleb Love, get the ball off the boards and go, and be physical with them and take them out of that half-court offense where they have so many sets that get them so many three-pointers. And it's just their transition defense is horrible. Absolutely horrible. And when you get a super athletic team, when I see games like this, I really like to think of matchups that would just be fascinating. Watching Iowa play Kentucky would be fascinating because we saw Kentucky really bother Kansas with their length, and they have so many athletes. They're so long, they're so talented, and I know Kentucky's not a great basketball team right now. But how would Iowa react to a team with that length and a team that can get up and down like Kentucky can, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Kentucky ends up being just an average team and gets an 8 seed, and they play Iowa, the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. I don't think that's out of the question here. But there were times that I was so impressed, and then there were times that I was like, if I'm a coach, I know exactly what I'm trying to do here to exploit the Iowa, because at times, and they got back into the game in the second half early in the second half because of it, that just get up and down, beat them down the floor, take them out of the half court, and you can make up some ground, because the question with Iowa has never been the offense, it's been the defense. And not only do we know there are holes, we found the biggest hole, and that was their transition defense.
Right. Yeah. And you said it. And, and I, as I was watching this game last night, I was, writing notes on sticky notes and, observations. And, it really sort of changed. There were sort of just 3 different phases of the game. There was the Iowa jumping out to that incredible start, and I'm taking notes about, wow, this is just sensational. And then you have UNC coming out, like you said, adjusting and taking advantage, pushing the tempo, taking advantage of Iowa's problems with transitional defense. Mm-hmm. And then you have Iowa adjusting back down the stretch. Iowa responded with a 14-0 run midway through the second half, in which none of those points came from Luka Garza. So that was an impressive response. But yeah, you kind of go through those phases where, like you said, simultaneously really impressed with this offense and what we've seen from all the supporting cast. Jordan Bohannon, like you said, 7 3-pointers, 6 assists, no turnovers. And then, we can go on. There's 2, 3, 4 other players making a huge impact for them offensively. So that's how he's simultaneously impressed by that, mm-hmm. and also still not sold that they can be the defensive force that they need to be. Not even I shouldn't even say defensive force, that they can be good enough defensively, sure, against certain matchups, like you said, in a situation where you have a team like a Kentucky that could just, apply that kind of pressure, and with that length, I think they're going to be matchups. There's still lots of areas for growth defensively that I'm going to be paying attention to in the coming weeks. And it's not going to impact, their status as one of the best college basketball teams in the country right now. It's more of a long-term, thing where, they have the offense where nobody's questioning that this is one of the top teams in the country. But when you're looking big picture, when you're looking at those potential, NCAA tournament games down the line, in certain matchups where they could get disrupted, because, like you said, the playbook is there now for it's developing, continuing to develop about what you need to kind of do to disrupt this team. And so, there's opportunity for them to adjust back to that, for them to strengthen those areas. But it's certainly something to watch, and it's something, because there's just very few questions about this offense. So that's the thing that we can watch, we can keep our eyes on in the upcoming weeks, and their bigger matchups in the weeks ahead. And as for North Carolina, I will say this. Obviously, it was really rough early for them, but the fact that they were able to make that adjustment, open the second half on a 14-5 run after being down 15 points early, shows how improved this team is and their resolve. Look, there were problems, of course. They turned the ball over too much. Shot selection wasn't always great, but I can't help but have some optimism about what this team could look like come March, especially considering that interior presence that they have. 42 points in the paint. They got 27 points off the bench. Like, they're not there. I'm not, here to say UNC is, outstanding and this is, they're going to be great, but I can't help but be optimistic that there's a path for them to really be a threatening team a few months from now in the tournament.
Yeah, and for Iowa as well, I was impressed by their ability to take that punch from UNC and bounce back the way that they did. Really quick on Illinois and Duke, I think this was just a case of Illinois is a bigger, stronger, tougher, more experienced college basketball team than the Illini. Kofi Cockburn is just going to be a problem against a lot of basketball teams, and he was a problem just from a sheer size perspective against Duke. They just really didn't have somebody to guard him. That's going to be an issue all season. 13 points, 8 rebounds. It's not like he took the world by storm with his performance, but he's just so huge. The biggest thing I had from yesterday is that this Illinois team and Brad Underwood's program is going to be good for a lot longer than just this season. I continue to love what I see from Adam Miller. I was really, really impressed by Andre Cabela. Those are both freshmen. I'm really, really impressed by both of those guys. If they continue to improve, I don't think either of them are in a position to believe that they're going to be, that at least at this very moment, that they're going to leave for the NBA draft after their freshman seasons. If they're both around for multiple years, even with DeSumo and Coburn theoretically leaving after this year to go to the draft, I can't imagine any world in which world in which either of them don't do that. But they're going to be good for a lot longer, and that's part of why this team is so good this season, because those guys shoot it well. They were 7-11 from the three-point line as a team. Adam Miller, a big part of that as a freshman. Curbelo was great. Just nobody could stay in front of him for some reason. He was just getting to the rim every time he had the ball in his hands on the offensive end. I'm impressed by this team every time I see them. Right, I think Baylor's the better basketball team, which is why they ultimately lost to Baylor. But they impressed me again here, and now Duke has lost multiple games on their home floor in the span of a week and a half. I mean, talk about you the official keeper of Butler's non-conference home winning streak. Duke doesn't lose non-conference games at home. That just doesn't happen. They've done it twice, and I know it's not the same without fans. I recognize that. I don't think Duke's very good, and they played two really good basketball teams, but they don't do this. They don't lose non-conference games at home, and they've gotten handled twice in their building.
Yeah. We know, right, with Duke that year after year they're going to have these incredibly talented young freshmen coming in, but the fit this year just hasn't been there. It hasn't been smooth. And I think, it's certainly, it's time to be a little bit nervous now about this team. If you're somebody who's really high on this team, invested in this team, it's okay to be a little nervous about their ability to put this together. This is going to be Coach K's toughest job in years. Right. I mean, there's not a ton to say. I'm right. You point out the 22% from 3-point range. They missed their first 12 3-point attempts. Yeah, they just it's just an offense that's not working. They're not making up for it on the defensive end. They gotta get something going. They got to put together. Like you, I was really impressed with Illinois again. And those are the two names that I had written down too: Adam Miller and Andre Curbelo. They're still getting settled in. Combined for 21 points, 3 assists, 3 steals in that game last night. And like you said, there's room for those guys to continue to get better. And I think it's really clear, like you mentioned as well, Illinois belongs in that very next tier behind Gonzaga and Baylor. I'm not saying, whether it's, 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 8, whatever. I think it's very clear they belong in that next tier. They're not Baylor, right? They lost to Baylor for a reason, but I think there's just no question that they can compete for a national title, and they're right there in that next tier.
100%. It was a really good night of college basketball. It started early, so you didn't even have to have multiple screens for these 3 games. They were all on ESPN, just one after another. It was a great 6 hours, 7 hours of college basketball last night. Coming up next, the Baltimore-Dallas game was not quite as entertaining as those 3 college basketball games. We're going to talk about it, look at the NFL playoff picture right now. That's coming up next. You're watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.